Cut a long story short, the guy in the back pulls out a blade about this long. Never seen a blade that long in my life. It was a proper combat knife. And I'm looking at him the whole time like this. I'm looking at him. The guy's shaking.
Police have arrested more than 1,000 people in a month-long crackdown on cannabis farms across the UK.
It's a business model which the police say also depends on human trafficking and serious violence to thrive.
How did you manage that stress? You know, the constant threat of violence, people coming after you, police.
I just smoke myself to sleep every single night. That's why I got over that, manage that, just stay still.
You're never going to get rid of the drug problem.
Some people, they really do glamorise that lifestyle.
Pull back the hammer and click on the trigger.
And there's nothing about it to glamorise.
I'm the reason the party time, I was the one giving out Molly.
There's nothing about it to look up to.
A UK rapper has been jailed for 3 years and 11 months after selling 45 kilos of cannabis after helping import the drug from the US.
Out right now, stream it, Rico back to jail. Free the guys, I don't know why.
A lot of these dealers who come with this persona of, oh yeah, I want to be this tough gangster. It was never me.
Told man, don't be comparing man to these dabbing ass rappers, B.
I knew that violence only bred more violence.
Tell your guy come get you.
It's horrible, man. To live like that all the time.
Hey, what's this? Zine? Huh? 90s phone.
Constantly looking over your shoulder.
What made you leave that lifestyle behind and why?
Disclaimer: this interview covers sensitive topics, including gang violence and drug-related activity, for educational purposes. The creator does not condone or endorse any illegal activity discussed. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome everyone. We're here with AK. So, first question. Can you describe your early life and what actually got you involved in this culture, roadman culture, and drug dealing as a whole?
I'm not going to pretend like I was from the streets or I was gangster or anything like that. I lived a pretty suburban lifestyle, let me put it that way. It wasn't like posh or anything like that, but I didn't grow up poor, let me put it that way. I didn't grow up poor. Like I wasn't under pressure, I wasn't traumatized, I wasn't bullied, I wasn't abused. I was just a curious kid. Growing up, curious. Curious in high school, curious throughout college, curious throughout uni, and when I got to uni, I started shotting. But I had a serious addiction by that point to weed. Like I started smoking weed about 15, every few months kind of thing. Got to college every weekend. Got to uni every day. All day. From morning till night. It was madness. And it got to the point where I started shotting to compensate for the amount of money I was spending on weed. And it just snowballed from there, to be honest. I loved gangster films. I didn't want to be a gangster, per se. Not that I didn't draw inspiration from a lot of the gangster films I watched. But I didn't really want to be a gangster. But I really wanted to smoke weed. I really enjoyed the feeling of being stoned, being high. And so it just became easy for me, especially with one of my mates who I was with at the time. He used to shot weed. I won't mention names, by the way, but the people who he used to roll with, one of them was already a dealer. And it was just so easy. Like me being from Manchester, and I was living in Preston at the time for uni. It was just so easy, because it was full of students. A lot of people on campus already knew that I smoked a lot of weed. And so they naturally came to me. Why not sell it and smoke the profit? Right? Basically free weed. That's the way I saw it, free weed. It got to the point though where the line just kept getting bigger and bigger. More and more people by word of mouth started knowing who I was and knowing that I was the guy to go to. when it came to weed, primarily. I did dabble in other things, but my main thing was weed. And it got to the point where I was making money, right, enough to pay my rent, enough to just do crazy things, go traveling, eating out takeaways every day, and still having money left over. It just got that big. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much money, really, when I look back at it, compared to what some people can earn. Legitimately, it really isn't that much. The most I made, at the height of it, was around, with everything going on, everything that I was doing, I was pulling in at the most about a grand and a bit a week. So not too bad. And obviously this is all profit, so a grand and a bit a week. And it just started from one curious toke on a zoo when I was about 15, year 10, high school. One curious toke on a zoo led to me shotting weed, shotting coke, shotting MD, shotting pills, mushrooms, you know, me magic mushroom shrooms, LSD, all these different things I got my hands on. All things I tried, by the way. I didn't get into the next level stuff. The heroin, the crack, I didn't touch that. I was offered. Like one of my dealers did offer to get me that stuff. I guess he was trying to push it on me. I was just like, nah, I'm not really interested in that. And even the other stuff like the coke, I only did that for a few months. The difference in the clientele between coke and weed, by the way, is massive. I did not enjoy coke fiends coming knocking on my door 3, 4 in the morning. Yo, wait, have you got this for me? You got a gram? No. Didn't like that. Yeah, just stuck with weed. Clientele is a lot more chill people, especially students. You know, it's just simple. But it's bad though. No, none of this is good. It's all bad. It's illegal and it can ruin lives, really. Weed addiction is a serious thing. It's a very real thing. A lot of people kind of laugh it off. And it is the most widely used drug. Legal drug, most widely used legal drug worldwide, but it's a serious drug, really. And it's only getting stronger. But it's one of the most easiest things to deal. At the same time, it's one of the easiest things to get caught with because it stinks. It's crazy. But a lot of the police don't even really care. Some of them do, don't get me wrong. Obviously, it's always nice for them to catch drug dealers, obviously. If they see a person walking down the street smoking a spliff, a lot of the times, police don't care about that. They're not going to care about you smoking it in your own home. That's 99% sure of that. But obviously, drug dealers, that's a different thing. If they catch you so blatantly doing what you're doing, of course, they're going to arrest you for something like that. And again, it depends on what level, because I was at the bottom of the food chain for years before I got to a certain level to where I could start wholesaling to other people. So obviously, a few dealers were coming to me at one point to buy in bulk. But that wasn't until years later, because overall I did it for 6 years.
How did living that lifestyle affect your relationships with friends and family at the time?
So I did live a double life for a long time. My earthly parents, earthly extended family members, I kept it from them as best as I could. I didn't want them to know. Obviously. I don't think any of them would have approved, really, to be honest. I had an uncle who was a Rasta. He died when I was a teenager, and I don't even think he would have approved, to be honest. And so that did affect me mentally, because I had to hide this huge portion of my life, really, because I was deeply involved. At one point, it was literally all I was doing for years, smoking weed and selling weed. That's all I was doing for years. And so it got to the point where I would avoid going back to see my earthly parents. And that would obviously raise their suspicion. It got to the point where they just turned up to my gaff where I was living. And I panicked because they just rang me. They just rang me saying, we're outside. And I think I just smoked a zoo at that point. So I just obviously quickly sprayed everything real quick, got rid of the stash, invited them in. And I realized at that point, what am I doing? It's been 3 years. It was 3 years at this point I was shot him. I'm living this double life. It's ridiculous. This drug dealing lifestyle completely taken over. I don't even know how I got a degree. I barely got a degree. It just took precedence over everything in my life, and it was just madness. Like, I went to uni for uni, but I ended up getting deeply intertwined in this completely crazy lifestyle, really. And a lot of it was fueled, most of it was fueled by a drug habit. Like traveling from city to city, looking for different strains, just because I wanted the different taste and my flavors, and I wanted to give my customers a new feel and a new high. It was madness. Like, the money was great, the money that came with it, but for me, most of it was about the experience, which is stupid. I was risking my freedom for an experience. And I'm not saying it's good to sell weed at all, even if you're doing it for the money. That wasn't me. My primary reason for selling was so I could consume, get high in your own supply kind of thing. And a lot of people liked me for that, because a lot of people were like, yeah, you're doing the right thing there, mate. Like, you're not one of those guys who's just in it for the money. Well, at the same time, I'm frying my own brain. I mean, have you seen and smelt the stuff that's going around these days, what kids are on? Like, I'm 32 right now, and that was chronic back then. What are people smoking these days?
So what are the biggest misconceptions that you can share that you know of that people may have regarding roadman culture or drug dealers?
It really isn't all glitz and glam at all. Like, some people, they really do glamorize that lifestyle. And there's nothing about it to glamorize. There's nothing about it to look up to. It's stupid. It's full of greed, corruption, violence. And that's the thing. Because I dealt mainly with students, I did deal with some people who were students, but because my customer base, my main clientele base was mainly students, all young people just kind of looking to have a good time, relax, chill out. I didn't have too much trouble when it came to violence, but I did hear about it. It did come close, and I was tempted on a few occasions to commit it myself because of certain things that had happened to me. And there was one point where I was threatened with serious violence. Like, I was held up with a knife at one point. Some people get into this kind of lifestyle for the respect as well, and the respect, it's all false. Because, for example, if I was to get caught doing anything that I did, would my mates be really visiting me in jail? Maybe some of them would. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know if I'd expect them to. I don't even know if I'd be thinking, oh yeah, so-and-so's gonna see me today, oh yeah, so-and-so's gonna visit me today, or I don't think I'd even be thinking about that, to be honest. Because why would they? Would I have visited them if they got sent down? I don't know. I'd like to think maybe I would with some of them, because I was close with a few of them. But the main thing is, would I have snitched on any of them? No. I'm very, very confident in saying that. I mean, I even had that conversation with one of my mates who was extremely paranoid, where there was an occasion where I was picking up some bits for both him and me, and he got extremely paranoid. Was on the phone saying, yo, what's going on, man? Why are there so many guys in the car? Because he was very paranoid about that. He was from down south, apparently. Not used to multiple guys in the car. This is during the pickup. There was a few of us in the car, and he didn't like that. He didn't like the idea of a bunch of guys in the car driving down to do a pickup, because he thought it looked suspicious. And I kind of get where he was coming from, but then he was saying to me, if I was to get caught with all of that stuff, he wouldn't want me to snitch on him. I told him straight, I'm not going to do that. If I was to get caught with the stuff, it's my stuff. I've always been like that. Even if it's not my stuff, that's just the kind of person I am, I suppose, to a certain extent. Because I wouldn't want someone to do that to me. Like, I wouldn't want any of my mates or someone who had given something to look after, if they were to get caught with it, to then turn around and say, oh yes, this guy's. It's a dangerous game, mate. It's dangerous. And it's, again, not worth it. I don't care how much money you're making, it really isn't worth it. It's just greed. Once people are involved and they're making money, they don't want to leave a lot of the times, especially if they're making good money, because they get hooked. And then thinking, why am I going to go to a 9 to 5 working for someone else when I can just do this for myself and live life on my own terms? Don't pay no tax, don't pay no national insurance. Because you don't. There's no tax on these drugs that people are selling. It's just all cash in hand. Right? I buy it for a certain price, break it down, make a profit on it. Taxman ain't getting none of that. You have to put it through HMRC, none of that. Just spend it. And again, because if the product itself is so good, which had a good source, it was always on point, no one's going to complain. People will always continue to come back because they're enjoying it. They're enjoying the product. They're enjoying the service. But is it worth it? No. Because the longer you're in it, the more paranoid you get. At least it was like that for me. At the beginning, I was so naive. Happy-go-lucky almost. I remember my first pickup, I was buzzing. Because it was that illegal buzz. Oh yeah, I'm doing something illegal. That was part of it. But also the fact that I knew I was getting something which I wanted and a few other people wanted, and I was the person to get it for them. But over time, that feeling just obviously becomes, well, you get numb to that feeling. It's non-existent. It's not really a high anymore. It's a necessity. You're getting this product because you have a business that you're running. And also you yourself want this product because you want to smoke it yourself. Because you're hooked in your own product. And so it becomes a necessity to do these things. It becomes a chore. And you try and make it as fun as you can. I was always as stoned as I could be when it came to these pickups and drop-offs. Just trying to make it more enjoyable. But then it also feeds into a vicious cycle. The more stoned you get whilst doing these illegal activities, the more paranoid you become because, oh, there's a police guy there, or undercover's here, or you start seeing things that really are not there. More than likely. Yeah, this guy may have looked at you, but it doesn't mean he thinks you're stoned or you're a drug dealer just because he looked at you. It's all in your head. Right, police are around every single corner watching and waiting, looking at your every single move. It's just not like that. But that's what you can start thinking in your own mind when you're doing these things and you're stoned out of your brain. And then you got to contend with other people trying to rob you. And that happened to me a few times. Most of the time it was sneaky, like batches of weed going missing here from the safe, along with money. That happened once. A couple of times, oh yeah, one of the guys that would come to me for ounces, he got robbed a couple of times, or so he says, and then he ends up owing me money for this and for that, and then I've taken some guy 9 bar, same guy that would deal with on a regular basis for years, took him a 9 bar, disappeared 1 week, never heard from him again, so then I'm $2,000 down.
Can you share like a memorable experience or like the craziest or scariest experience you had whilst you were like involved in that culture, that lifestyle?
Scariest experience, I would say, was getting robbed with a knife. I was in the car. This was during a pickup. It was a pickup that had gone wrong, actually. It was supposed to be a correction for a pickup. This was actually involving coke. And it wasn't even my coke, which was the funniest thing. It was for a mate of mine. He was with me, but he was in a different car somewhere else. I went out with what was supposed to be my mate, who ended up setting me up with somebody else who I have no idea who he was. We're driving, my mate's driving. I'm in the passenger seat at the front. This guy is at the back, who he picks up. Right, because we're basically trying to correct this issue that we were having with some coke. Cut a long story short, the guy in the back pulls out a blade about this long. Never seen a blade that long in my life. It was a proper combat knife. I'd never seen anything like it in person. Pulls out this long combat blade. I was like, yo, immediately my first thought, jump out the car. And it wasn't moving too fast, but I jumped out, right? Ragged off the seatbelt, jumped out the car, and I didn't know where I was. I panicked. And then they were like, yo, what you doing? Get back in the car, man, get back in the car. And for some reason, I got back in. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what I was thinking. I weren't thinking straight, clearly. Like, I just escaped from a situation that potentially was very threatening, very life-threatening. Like the guy was literally waving a blade in my face. And I was just thinking, I need to get away from that blade. But I got back in the car anyway because my mate was saying, yo, just get back in. So I thought, okay, he's telling me to get in. This guy's saying get in. Let's just see how this plays out. So I'll go back in and again start threatening both of us. And I'm looking at him the whole time like this. I'm looking at him. The guy's shaking. I can see he's visibly shaking. So I'm thinking, right, he's shook. I don't think he wants to shank me right now. But obviously he's nervous. But I don't know him. I don't know who in the world he is. He could very well just shank me. Doesn't matter how nervous or shaky he looks. But I was hoping that obviously he wouldn't. So I stayed in the car. Started ranting and raving, saying, oh yeah, you owe me money, this and this. Not talking to me, talking to my mate. The way it's set up is that this guy comes in to collect some money from my mate who was driving. Obviously, after the fact, I realized that this whole thing was fake. I had a feeling in the back of my mind that it kind of was. It seemed a bit too scripted, but at the same time, I've never experienced anything like that before, so I didn't want to take any chances. And so there was £600 in my pocket. Let's put it that way. I had £600 on me. Thankfully, it's crazy how intuition works though. Thankfully, I had left an extra £1,200 with my other mate who was back wherever he was in his car. Like something was just telling me, just don't take this extra bit of money, lad. Just don't take it. Leave this in the car. Take the 600. Because that wasn't even my £600. That was my mate's. They're trying to sort out whatever deal had gone wrong beforehand. But the guy who's driving pulls out the 600, which was mine / my mate's, and gives it to the guy who with the knife. And then he drops him off, and that was that, essentially. And then he tells me, oh, don't worry, I'll sort you out, I'll give you the money back, don't worry. I just got robbed, we just got robbed. And I was shaking, obviously, kind of, because I was shook. I was like, rah. What in the world was that about? And he was like, don't worry, I'll sort it out, I'm sorry about this, I'll sort it out. And so he drops me off back to my mate. I tell my mate what's happened. Found out straight away, not a few days later actually, that the whole thing was fake. And my mate ghosted me. Didn't pick up my calls, texts. Knocked on his house a few times. Didn't answer the door. One of my other mates, my mate wanted to run through his house, all that sort of stuff. I was like, you know what? Let's leave it. I knew that violence only bred more violence. I didn't want to be involved in a cycle of violence. Like I took inspiration from the film Layer Cake, if you've ever seen that. And again, not condoning drug dealing or anything like that. It's not a good activity to get involved in. But one thing that stuck with me from that film, that the main character was a drug dealer. He says that he's not a gangster. He was a businessman whose commodity just happened to be cocaine. He hated violence. Violence only attracted the attention of the authorities. The authorities aren't stupid. Police aren't stupid. Some of them are, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of them that are not. A lot of them know what's going on, especially at the higher levels. Serious organised crime agency, the ones who fight against drugs, people like that. And to a certain extent, even the average everyday copper. Not all of them are idiots. There's a lot of them who are. But you have to respect the law. And that's what I did. I wasn't one of them that, would give the middle finger to police officers. I wouldn't shout or I wouldn't try and get in altercations with them, like a lot of people seem to do. Like a lot of shotters would do that. They would argue back and forth with police. I just felt, why draw attention to yourself? Like I remember when I was a kid and my cousin got stopped and searched because he did that just as a police van was driving past. He wasn't aiming at the police. That was their reasoning for stopping and searching him, because they were saying that he held a gun sign toward them. He didn't. That's just how my cousin speaks when he chats. You know, some people speak like that, you know what I mean? Yo, bang, bang. And they took that to be he threatened to shoot them. Some sort of nonsense. Obviously, he stopped and searched and found nothing. But I remember that when I was a kid. That was the first time I saw someone get stopped and searched, actually. But some people are crazy with it. Some people will give police officers the middle fingers whilst holding things on them that they shouldn't. I'm just never going to do that. So I had the opportunity, multiple opportunities really. I was offered to send people round to this guy's house to beat him up. I had a thought, oh yeah, should I go around there with a knife? And then it's just like, no. You know what? 600 quid. It's not really much money. At least not to me at the time. What would I gain from trying to chase that money back? Right, I've cut the guy off, obviously. Let's just take it as a lesson. Right? It's one snake that you got out of your life. And that's happened a few times. Cutting off snakes. So many snakes. Which is another reason why it's just not worth it in that kind of business. If you want to call it that, it's not. Because again, it's a world fueled by greed. And if you have a load of addicts and people who are hungry for money, combined, all intertwined in this world, it's not a good recipe for something wholesome, is it? It's not going to be. Obviously, weed has this perception. It has this image almost of the super chill person who has no worries, but no, let me tell you. If you're hooked on weed and you smoke it regularly, you don't even have to smoke it every day. If you smoke it every week, every month, you've got a problem. And it's expensive. £20 for a bag like that. Right, about 3 spliffs, if you want to make some nice size spliffs. If you want to really stretch it out, maybe you can get 5 out of it. It's skinny zoos, but 20 English pounds for something that's going to last you. What lasts a lot of stoners? Half a day. Or a full day feeling like this. And then people want to feel like that every day. £20 a day. Some people spend more. And obviously, when I really got into it, before I started shotting, that's what I was doing. 60, 80, £100 a day, smoking this stuff.
That must have been stressful though. Like, how did you manage that stress? You know, the constant threat of violence, like people coming after you, police.
So with me, I didn't really feel threatened much throughout the whole time I was shotting really with violence. Not that much. Here and there, yeah. But the threat of arrest, that was very real. And that only increased the longer I continued shotting really. Like that feel, the constant paranoia, the heart beating, fluttering, constant anxiety every time I walk past a police officer. And that even continued, to be fair, for about a month or so after I'd stopped. It was a genuine fear. And it took me a little while, like a short while, to get over it completely. But yeah, I mean, I just smoked myself to sleep every single night. That's how I got over that and managed that. Just stayed stoned. Stayed high all the time. Was never really ever sober. And so once you're in that mindset, once you're in that stoner mindset, it's blissful, willful ignorance to the realities of what you're doing. So many people who shot weed smoke weed. I think it's very rare to find somebody who doesn't shot weed and doesn't smoke it. You do find those people. But at the street level, at the ground level, very rare to find. Because most people at the ground level, at the level that I was at for most of the time I was shotting, they enjoy smoking it too. Again, a big reason I got into it in the first place was because I was a heavy blazer. And so I wanted free weed. How can I do that? Sell it. And smoke the proceeds. It just progressed from there. Again, the line just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Word of mouth spread. It wasn't just students that had my number anymore, it was locals, people from outside different cities. That's where it started getting big. And I started feeling more hot. And people from Liverpool and all these different people contacting me, not just for weed either, for other things that I didn't have at the time. I was shot in coke, as I mentioned before, like temporarily for a few months. That felt too hot, so I stopped that. But people were asking me for that. People were contacting me for all sorts. But yeah, that fear of arrest is it's horrible, really, to live like that all the time. Constantly looking over your shoulder. You just don't know when you're gonna... Anytime you can get stopped and searched, anytime. I've only been stopped and searched 4 times throughout my entire life. I've not been stopped and searched since I've been legit. Not that I couldn't, obviously I can still get stopped and searched anytime, really, but it just happened to be that when I was selling, I'd been stopped and searched. But thankfully, for me, every single time I've been stopped and searched, I had nothing on me. And all 4 times I was stopped and searched, it wasn't random stops by police, it was because of sniffer dogs. 4 times I had sniffer dogs wrap themselves around me, or smell me up, and because of that the police searched me, each time not finding anything. But I would admit to them, yeah, I'd just been smoking, so that's why the dog's smelling what it's smelling. They can't do anything about that. If you just admit to them you have been smoking, they can't legally do anything about it, because there's nothing in my possession. No, that just reminds me, the 3rd time I was stopped and searched, I did have something on me. A little bit, probably like half a gram, that I brought on the plane from the UK to Latvia, down my boxes. Because I used to do that quite a lot when I would be travelling. Foolish, I know, but yeah, I'll take weed with me. Sometimes larger amounts. I think the most I'd taken was about a couple of grams or something like that. But on this occasion, I took like about 0.5. And I remember getting to the airport in Latvia, first time there, Riga, go through customs and all that sort of stuff. And I saw the dogs there, stationed, 2 of them. And then my heart just dropped, because I knew I had something on me. My heart just dropped. I was like, I'm going to get stopped here. I've been stopped twice before that by dogs. Once in Preston train station, once in Manchester train station, Piccadilly. So I knew what was going to go down. Right, the dog's going to smell the weed straight away, and I'm going to get searched, and they're going to find it. So I doubled back, went round the corner, took the weed out of my boxes, threw it in the closest bin I could see. So then when I finally do get round to coming toward the dog stops me anyway, smells me. The officers pull me to the side, and then one of them asked me, have you had anything? Have you got anything on you? I was like, no. You can search me. And then they showed me a video of CCTV footage, clearly showing me throwing something in the bin. It was crazy. My heart was in my mouth at this point. And so they were like, you just may as well admit it. Like, we're going to do fingerprint testing, and it's going to find your fingerprints on it. So I was like, you know what? It's mine. Yeah, I'm sorry about this. It's mine. So they take me in the back, asked me a few more questions. Why did I do this stuff? And I can't even remember exactly, but I remember one of the officers, this older woman, she asked the guy that was questioning me, how much is it? How much is it? Because I just started to break down. I was almost in tears. I was like, here I am. First time in Latvia. I did this stupid thing of bringing weed over. Didn't need to. Just ruined my trip. Why did I do that? Potentially got looking at jail. I don't even know the laws really regarding weed, but I thought most places seem to be quite lenient, or at least don't really care as much. It was in Europe at the end of the day, so I didn't think it would be that bad, but I know typically people don't favour transportation of drugs on a plane no matter how much the quantity. But on this occasion, because it was such a small amount, the older woman was like, let's let it go. I've never felt such relief. It was madness. Never felt such relief. And it was a small amount. I think it was even less than half a gram. It must have been like 0.2 or something like that. And so they let me go. Obviously confiscated the weed. And that was that. Never did that again, obviously. When you get to the point when you're that badly hooked on weed, that you're having to transport it overseas just because you're scared, oh no, how am I going to go some days without enjoying it? It's madness. I'm on vacation and I'm still thinking about weed. Every time I travelled, once I'd run out of the stuff I'd brought with me, I would search for it, asking local dealers, to the point where once in Rome, I was asking really dodgy looking guys out in the centre, undercover police officers stopped me. They're like, "Hey, it's Carabinieri. We see you talking to the pusher." And I was like, "What?" "Yes, we see you talking to the pusher over there. Are you going to come up to the station?" I was like, "No, what you on about? I'm a tourist." Showed them my hotel key, and they're like, "Oh, you thought, okay." And they let me go. But yeah, you're just risking so much when you have these addictions and these problems. And all of this is what drove me to continue shotting, because I needed the weed myself. Obviously, I didn't need it, but I felt like I did. I remember one time I just picked up 12 ounce, and it was a bad batch of weed as well. It wasn't a great batch. I'd wanted to get rid of it ASAP. But I remember picking it up, and I went to KFC. On my way back from KFC, about 20 minutes later, there was a squad van outside my gaff. And I was like, oh my days. Oh my days. So then as I'm getting closer, I see about 8 coppers, hearts pounding in my chest. I'm like, right, they've searched the place. They found everything. They're waiting for me to arrest me, essentially. Well, I obviously didn't know for sure, but this is what I'm thinking. So I'm just walking to my arrest, essentially. I continued walking because I thought, you know what? It's over. Had a good run. Everyone gets caught in the end, right? I continue walking. Get to the front door. Big cop is looking at me like this. "You alright, mate? Is this your place?" And I was like, "Yeah." My voice shaking and that. I was like... And then the guy goes to me, "Oh yeah, we're just looking for a black lad with a KFC box." And I was like shocked. I was like, oh my days, seriously? And then I went inside. And then there's like, again, about 7 or 8 coppers in there. And they all burst out laughing. Was like, only joking, mate. And I was like, oh my days, mate. And then essentially what they were looking for, they showed me a warrant for a stolen push bike. I was like, oh, you're looking for a push bike? Yeah. And they're like, yeah, can we just have a look around your gaff? Like, there's a stolen push bike in this area. And I was like, okay. So I let them in. Literally, they stepped in, had a quick look, didn't open no cupboards, nothing. Literally just stepped in. Was like, all right, lads, no push bike in here. Then got off. But there were ounces sat in one of the drawers. If they pulled open one of the drawers, that'd have been me done. You get me? And thankfully it was, because it was a bad batch of weed, it wasn't particularly strong smelling, thankfully this time. It wasn't a good batch. So that helped me as well, but that's all he would have had to do. In my mind, I'm thinking they'd been following me for ages, they've been tracking me, I'm done. But it wasn't the case. They seemed to at least be looking for a stolen push bike, which wasn't in mine. And then left. But close calls like that just made me think, what in the world am I doing for 12 ounces? Like at wholesale price, what? Obviously prices vary from however cheap people can get it these days, £150 to £200, £220 an ounce. Obviously I'd break that down into little 20 bags and 10 bags and whatnot and sell them individually, but £200 an ounce, 12 ounces, it's 2,400. I'm going to go to prison for £2,400, get a criminal record for life, and struggle to get a legitimate job in the future because of this stupid weed habit that I've got. Again, I was primarily doing it because of the weed habit. I wasn't in it just for the money. The money was a bonus that came along with it. And a few close calls like that. I was on the way picking up 18 ounces and all of a sudden I was seeing just blue lights flashing everywhere, just literally round the corner from the pickup location. I'm thinking, right, we're going to get stopped. We're going to get arrested here and there. Me and my mate who was the driver. We had grands in the car ready to pick up. Thinking, that's it. It's a sting operation. They know we're coming. But it didn't. It wasn't like that. There were blue flashing lights everywhere, but it weren't for us. They were for somebody else connected to another drug deal. Like, round the corner. Crazy. So many different occasions like that I'm thinking of now that are coming to memory. It's madness. Remember one time picking up, I was about to pick up, and then, again, another big batch, about 18 ounces, something like that. And just as I stepped out of the door, my mate who was outside waiting to collect me was like, yo, yo, Fed just came down the street. I was like, what? Really? They're like, yeah, you go back inside, bro, I'm gonna dip. And I was like, oh my days. So I go back inside the guy's house, told my dealer, I was like, yo, Fed just went past, you know. And the dealer's got, this dealer was mad, mate, he had CCTV all over the guy, up and down, facing up and down the street. But he was paranoid as well. He smoked so much as well, it was madness. He told me, yeah, just wait, chill for a bit, don't worry. Your mate's gone up the street. Tell him to come back round the back. You can exit that way. Just take your time. Just don't panic. Obviously, I was panicking because, again, I had 18 ounces of something ridiculous like that on me. If I'd been stopped with that by police, I would have been in serious trouble.
What was the most you've ever picked up?
If I remember correctly, about 30 ounces. I remember driving. It was me, one of my other mates who was in the car. I had like 30 ounces underneath my seat, like a half ounce of coke, and like another ounce of MDMA in the back seat. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is prison term quantities. You're not getting a slap on the wrist if you get caught with any of this. First time or no first time. And I remember getting back and just immediately just filled with paranoia, just thinking, I can't hold all this. What is going on? This is when the operation had expanded quite a lot. I remember just thinking, I can't hold all of this here. This is stupid. I've got people in and out of the gaff. We're in a flat with a bunch of us. I had two of the mates who were shotting out the same flat. On average every day, about 80 people would be in and out of the gaff to pick up. Sometimes 100 if it was a particularly busy day. Imagine that, 100 people every day in and out of the gaff. Like a revolving door, all day, from morning till night. And I'm just thinking, I can't, it's stupid. Fed could just raid us at any moment, and I've got all of this in the gaff, in my room. So I called one of my other mates and moved everything over to his place. And he's, I remember thinking, because I paid him like $250 or something like that, just to hold it for a few days, a few nights. Or was it $250 a week I think I was giving him, just to hold it. But I remember the first night he got it, he felt the paranoia too. I remember he was telling me, he was like, he couldn't sleep. He struggled to sleep. And that's what can happen to you. Because it's a risky business. Obviously people are paying you for the risk. There's nothing really, when it comes to the weed itself, it's not really worth much. It's plant matter, when you think about it. You can grow from seed pretty cheaply as well. It's not really expensive to grow. What makes it so expensive is the risk that's associated with it. That guy, that stoner who just wants to get high today, is giving you £20 because he understands the value of the risk that you're taking in order to hold the weed, right? Searching around for it, finding dealers, picking it up, testing it, bagging it up, scaling it up. He understands all of that is a risk that you're willing to take to provide him or her with a service so they can get their weed. At the end of the day, where else are they going to get it from? It's illegal. If you can be charming, approachable, that's what I try to do. I'm a pretty chill person for the most part. You got a lot of these dealers who come with this persona of, oh yeah, I want to be this tough gangster. It was never me. I didn't like the idea of it. I mean, I've experienced it with others picking up. It could be intimidating for people to pick up weed. I just wanted to make it as a pleasant experience as possible. Because I've also experienced that as well from like more hippie type people who were very relaxed when it came to picking up from them. But some people are just very sketchy, dodgy. It's like you just want to get it off them and go. So yeah, I just try to make the whole experience as pleasant as possible for the customer. Because at the end of the day, I want their business. I want them to keep coming back. I want them to feel as comfortable as possible, so that I'm their number one go-to. The weed obviously will sell itself if it's a good product, no matter who's holding it. Obviously, if it's an absolute muppet, someone who's horrible to the customers, doesn't really matter how strong the weed is, you're not going to get repeat business. Obviously, if there's nowhere else to go, then they will come to you. But there's so many people shotting, you can't afford to be a muppet. People will look elsewhere. Why are they going to take nonsense from you if they can just go to Jack or Joe or Jimmy down the road, who's a lot calmer with it?
What made you leave that lifestyle behind, and why?
I think the turning point for me, really was the level of paranoia I was experiencing. It was just too much. The short-term memory loss from the abuse of the weed, it was just too much. Too many times I put my phone down and I didn't know where I'd put it. I'd be searching for ages trying to find it in my room, right? I could put down any item. If I didn't put it down in a designated spot in my room, which I'd had to like map out for myself because my short-term memory was just that bad, I wouldn't be able to find it. Forgetting what I was talking about mid-conversation as well was another one. Having to wrap my brain, it's like, what was I just saying? That would regularly happen as well. But the paranoia really, that was the game changer. That was when I realised, I can't keep doing this, man. It wasn't really hallucinations per se, it was more so my perception of this was just so warped. Like I was sick of looking at people and thinking, this guy thinks I'm a dealer. This guy knows I'm stoned. I feel so stoned right now. This guy must know. Everyone must know I'm so stoned. When in reality, that's just not the case. You could be stoned off your nut. Nobody really knows unless you have red eyes. But that stopped happening with me. Didn't get slant eyes, didn't get red eyes, didn't get anything really. There was nothing from the outside looking in that would make somebody think I was under the influence of weed. Maybe my eyes would get a little bit glassy. The slurred speech that some people may get, the slow down speech. I mean, I would speak slowly, to be fair, very slowly sometimes, like, yo, what's going on, man? Yo, you alright, man? Yeah, I'm gonna get this and then, yeah. I would speak like that over the phone to people. Yeah, yo, you good, man? Yeah. Come round and be like 5 minutes and then, yeah, you get me, yeah, it's chill, mate. Yeah, you want a 20, yeah. And it was ridiculous, really. But it was weird. I remember walking back after hitting the vape at my mate's house, looking up the street, seeing this woman. And in my mind, I thought this woman was a witch. You know, like Wicked Witch of the West. I don't know if you've seen The Wizard of Oz, but it just reminded me of that. Like this flapping dress and just... I don't know why. Obviously, under the influence and paranoia, or everything combined just made me think this woman was a witch, and I didn't like it. And then as I got closer to this woman, as I was walking closer and closer, I realised it wasn't a witch, it was just a normal woman. I remember just getting indoors, crying out to God, Jesus Christ, breaking down on my couch, and just crying. For ages. Silently. Just tears flowing down my face. And I remember like the whole room was lit up. That's what it felt like anyway. And the next day, I didn't want to smoke anymore. I didn't want to vape. I didn't want to touch it. The desire just completely gone. And that's when I started looking toward Christianity.
So just out of interest, why are you wearing a balaclava today? Are you worried about potential legal ramifications or anything like that, or?
Check it now, bro, yeah. I've actually got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to hide, so... Look. Surprise.
Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace my feet.